What happens when a calm morning talk show suddenly turns into one of the most uncomfortable conversations on live TV? Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. So the segment starts off exactly how you'd expect. The hosts are seated, the audience is warm, clapping, everything feels routine. Sunny Hostin is smiling, Whoopi is relaxed, and the energy is light. Amy Adams walks out, smiling, waving to the audience, clearly there to promote her latest project. Nothing unusual. Sunny leans forward slightly, that signature engaged posture she has when she's about to lead a conversation. Sunny, Amy, it's so good to have you here. You've had such an incredible career, and I feel like every role you take on has something deeper to say. This new project, people are already talking about how bold it is. Amy smiles, nodding. Amy, thank you, that means a lot. Yeah, it's definitely a story that pushes some boundaries, but I think that's important. The audience claps lightly. Everything is smooth so far. Joy Behar jumps in, a little playful. Joy, you always say that, and then the movie comes out and suddenly everyone's arguing at dinner tables. Amy laughs. Amy, that's kind of the goal, right? To get people talking. Sunny nods, but her expression shifts just slightly. It's subtle, but noticeable if you're paying attention. Sunny, speaking of talking, this film touches on some really sensitive cultural and political themes. And I think a lot of people feel that when Hollywood does that, it doesn't always get it right. The tone shifts just a little. Not dramatic, but enough. Amy pauses for a second, still smiling, but more measured now. Amy, I think that's a fair concern. But I also think storytelling is about exploring perspectives, even when it's uncomfortable. Sunny, right, but who gets to tell those stories, Amy? Because that's where people start to feel like their voices aren't being represented. The audience reacts, just a slight murmur. That kind of, oh, here we go energy. Amy leans back slightly, then forward again, choosing her words carefully. Amy, I think it's important that more voices are included, absolutely. But I also don't think storytelling should be limited. Actors, writers, we're interpreting human experiences. Sunny doesn't fully agree, and it shows. Sunny, but interpretation can sometimes cross into misrepresentation. And when that happens, it can actually do harm. Whoopi raises her hand slightly, trying to keep things balanced. Whoopi. Okay, let's not jump too far ahead. But Sunny continues, still calm but more direct now. Sunny. No, I just think it's important. Because we've seen situations where stories about marginalized communities are told without those communities being involved. Amy nods again, but now her expression is more serious. Amy, and I agree with that. I really do. But in this case, there were consultants. There were people involved who guided the process. Sunny, consultants are one thing. Ownership is another. That line lands. The audience reacts again. Some claps, some quiet. Amy takes a breath. You can see she's staying composed, but she's also not backing down. Amy, I understand that perspective. But if we start saying only certain people can tell certain stories, where does that leave art? Joy leans in, sensing the tension building. Joy. Yeah, because then nobody's allowed to act anymore. That's the job. A few laughs from the audience, breaking the tension for a second. Sunny smiles slightly, but she's not letting it go. Sunny, it's not about stopping people from acting. It's about responsibility, especially when you have a platform like yours. Amy, and I take that responsibility seriously. I wouldn't be part of something I felt was harmful. Sunny tilts her head. Sunny, but intent and impact aren't always the same. That line hits harder. The audience goes quiet. Amy pauses longer this time. You can see she's thinking about how to respond. Amy, that's true. But I think we also have to allow room for conversation instead of immediately assuming harm. Sunny, conversation is good, but accountability is better. Now the tension is very clear. Even Whoopi leans back slightly, watching it unfold instead of stepping in. Sarah Haynes tries to soften things. Sarah, I think both of you are kind of saying similar things, just from different angles. Sunny shakes her head gently. Sunny, no, I think we're saying different things. And that's okay. Amy looks directly at Sunny now, more engaged. Amy, it is okay. But I don't think it's fair to suggest that telling a story automatically takes something away from someone else. Sunny, it can though. History shows that. The audience reacts again, this time louder. Some clapping, some shifting in seats. Amy, but it can also bring awareness. It can create empathy. Sunny, If it's done right. Amy. And I believe we did it right. There's a brief pause. That kind of silence that only happens on live TV when nobody's quite sure who's going to speak next. Whoopi finally steps in. Whoopi. All right, hold on. This is why we have these conversations, because people don't always agree. And that's fine. She looks at Amy. Whoopi. You're coming from the perspective of an artist. Then at Sunny. Whoopi. And you're coming from the perspective of impact and representation. Sunny nods, but she adds one more point. Sunny. I just think when you're in a position like Amy's, there's an extra layer of responsibility that can't be ignored. Amy responds quickly this time, a little more firmly. Amy. And I don't ignore it. But I also won't accept the idea that I shouldn't tell a story because of who I am. The audience reacts, this time louder. You can feel the split in the room. Joy leans back, whispering half-jokingly. Joy. Well, this got serious real fast. A few laughs, but the tension doesn't fully break. Sunny looks at Amy again, calmer but still firm. Sunny. It's not about you personally. It's about a bigger issue. Amy. But I'm part of that issue now, right? That line lands. Even Sunny pauses for a second. The audience goes quiet again. And you can feel it. The conversation is no longer just about a film. It's personal now. Amy's last line hangs in the air longer than anyone expects. Amy. But I'm part of that issue now, right? There's a noticeable shift. The audience isn't reacting the same way anymore. It's quieter, more attentive. This isn't just a surface-level debate now. It's becoming something more personal, more uncomfortable. Sunny exhales softly before responding, her tone still controlled, but more deliberate. Sunny, you're part of the conversation. And when you're part of the conversation, you have to be open to criticism. Amy nods slightly, but her posture changes. She's sitting a little straighter now, more engaged, less relaxed than when she first walked out. Amy, I am open to criticism. I think that's important. But there's a difference between criticism and being told that you shouldn't have a voice in certain stories. Sunny, no one is saying you shouldn't have a voice. Amy looks directly at her. Amy, it feels like that's what's being implied. A few audience members react, a mix of murmurs and light clapping. Whoopi shifts in her seat, watching closely, clearly weighing whether to step in again or let it continue. Sunny leans forward slightly, her expression more serious now. Sunny, what I'm saying is that when stories involve communities that have historically been silenced, it's important to center those voices first. That's not exclusion, that's correction. Amy listens carefully, nodding once, but she doesn't look convinced. Amy, and I respect that. I really do. But I also think we have to be careful not to create new limitations while trying to fix old ones. Joy raises her eyebrows, clearly interested in where this is going. Joy, that's actually a good point. Because then you start asking, who decides what stories belong to who? Sunny turns slightly toward Joy. Sunny, communities decide. The people whose experiences are being portrayed should have the strongest voice in how those stories are told. Amy responds quickly, almost instinctively. Amy, but what if they are involved? What if they are part of the process, even if they're not the face of it? Sunny, then they should be more than just part of the process. They should be leading it. The audience reacts again, this time louder, a mix of applause and a few scattered sounds. Sarah tries again to ease the tension. Sarah, I think what's interesting is that both of you are talking about inclusion, just in different ways. Sunny gently interrupts. Sunny, inclusion isn't the same as representation. Amy tilts her head slightly, clearly processing that. Amy, okay, but where is the line? Because I genuinely want to understand that. That question changes the tone just a bit. It's less defensive, more curious, but still firm. Sunny pauses for a moment before answering, choosing her words carefully. Sunny, the line is when people feel like their stories are being told without them, or worse, being reshaped in ways that don't reflect their reality. Amy, but isn't that always a risk with storytelling? No matter who tells it. Sunny, yes. But that risk is higher when the storyteller isn't from that lived experience. Amy leans back slightly, then forward again, clearly not fully agreeing. Amy, I hear that. I do. But I also think empathy allows us to step into lives that aren't our own. That's part of what acting is. Joy nods along. Joy. Otherwise, we'd all just be playing ourselves all the time, and that would get boring real quick. A few laughs from the audience, but the tension still lingers underneath. Sunny smiles briefly at the joke, then looks back at Amy. Sunny, empathy is important, but it doesn't replace lived experience. Amy, no, it doesn't, but it can still create understanding. Sunny, sometimes. And sometimes it can unintentionally reinforce stereotypes. That line draws a stronger reaction. A few louder claps, some audience members nodding. Amy's expression tightens just a little. Not angry, but definitely more serious. Amy, are you saying that's what this film does? There it is, the question that pushes things further. Sunny doesn't answer immediately. The pause is noticeable. Sunny, I'm saying that's what some critics are saying. Amy, have you seen it? The audience reacts again, that subtle, oh moment. Sunny, I've seen parts of it, yes. Amy, parts of it? Sunny, yes. Amy nods slowly, then responds, calm, but clearly more pointed now. Amy, I think it's difficult to make a full judgment on something without seeing the entire story. Sunny doesn't back down. Sunny, and I think it's important to listen to the people who feel impacted by it, whether you agree with them or not. Amy, I do listen. But I also think it's important to have the full context before forming a strong opinion. The audience is fully engaged now. No background noise, just focused attention. Whoopi finally leans forward, stepping in again. Whoopi. All right, let me just say this, because this is where it gets tricky. People are allowed to have opinions, even if they haven't seen every piece of something. But, she looks at Sunny. Whoopi. You also can't shut down the person who actually did the work and lived with the project. Sunny nods, but she adds, Sunny, I'm not shutting her down. I'm challenging her. Amy responds almost immediately. Amy, and I'm okay with being challenged. But I also think the conversation should be balanced. Joy jumps in again, half smiling. Joy, this is starting to feel like a courtroom. A few laughs break out, easing the tension for a moment. But Amy doesn't laugh this time. She stays focused on Sunny. Amy, I just want to make sure that the conversation includes all sides, not just criticism. Sunny, criticism is part of the conversation. Amy, so is understanding. Sunny, understanding comes from listening. Amy, and listening goes both ways. That exchange lands heavily. The audience reacts again, louder this time, a mix of applause and murmurs. Sarah looks between them, clearly feeling the intensity. Sarah, okay, I think what we're seeing here is a really important conversation that a lot of people are having right now. Sunny interrupts again, not aggressively, but firmly. Sunny, and it's not always comfortable. Amy nods. Amy, no, it's not. But discomfort doesn't mean something is wrong. Sometimes it means something is worth talking about. Sunny studies her for a moment, then responds. Sunny, and sometimes it means something needs to change. Another pause. Another moment where the air feels heavy. Even the audience seems unsure how to react this time. Amy finally speaks again, softer but still steady. Amy, change is important. I agree with that. I just don't think shutting people out is the way to get there. Sunny, and I don't think ignoring concerns is the way either. They both stop. For the first time since the tension really escalated, neither of them speaks immediately. Whoopi looks out at the audience, then back at the table. Whoopi, well, this is live television, folks. That gets a small laugh, a release of pressure. But the moment isn't over. Not even close. Whoopi's attempt to lighten the mood gets a small laugh, but it doesn't fully reset the table. The tension is still there, just quieter now, sitting beneath the surface. There's a brief pause, the kind where producers are probably talking in everyone's ears. But on screen, it just looks like everyone is choosing their next words carefully. Amy adjusts slightly in her seat, then looks back at Sunny. Amy, can I ask you something honestly? Sunny nods. Sunny, of course. Amy, do you think there's a way to tell stories like this without someone feeling like it's wrong? The question isn't defensive this time. It's direct, almost reflective. The audience picks up on that shift. It's quieter again. Sunny takes a second before answering. Sunny, I think there's always going to be someone who disagrees. That's just reality. But I think the goal should be minimizing harm and maximizing authenticity. Amy nods. Amy, and what does authenticity look like to you in this case? Sunny leans back slightly, thinking. Sunny, it looks like having people from those communities not just consulting, but creating. Writing, directing, producing, being in control of how their stories are told. Amy listens closely. Amy, And if they are part of that process, even if they're not the face of it, does that count? Sunny. It depends on how much influence they actually have. Joy chimes in again, her tone a little more serious now. Joy. This is where it gets complicated, though, because most productions have a lot of moving parts. It's not always as simple as saying one group controls everything. Sunny nods slightly. Sunny, I know that. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to shift the balance. Amy leans forward again, clearly wanting to clarify something. Amy, and I agree with shifting the balance. I really do. I just don't think the solution is to question the legitimacy of every person who tries to tell a story outside of their own experience. The audience reacts, a few claps, a few murmurs. Sunny responds quickly. Sunny, it's not about questioning legitimacy. It's about questioning impact. Amy, but when that question is directed at individuals, it can feel personal. Sunny, it is personal. These stories are personal. That lands. The audience goes quiet again. Amy pauses, then nods slowly. Amy, I understand that. But I also think it's important to separate intent from assumption. Because when people assume harm without fully engaging with the work, it shuts down the possibility of dialogue. Sunny, or it opens the door for accountability. Amy, but accountability requires context. Sunny, and context includes listening to criticism, even when it's uncomfortable. Amy exhales slightly, not frustrated, but clearly feeling the weight of the exchange. Amy, I'm not against criticism. I just think it should come from a place of understanding the full picture. Sunny, and I think sometimes the reaction itself is part of the picture. Sarah nods, trying to bridge the gap again. Sarah, that's actually interesting, because it's almost like the response becomes part of the story, not just the story itself. Joy, exactly. The reaction can be louder than the movie. A few audience members laugh softly. Amy gives a small smile at that, but quickly returns to the conversation. Amy, and that's what concerns me sometimes, because then the conversation shifts away from the work itself. Sunny, or it reveals something about the work that people didn't initially see. Amy, but what if that interpretation isn't accurate? Sunny, then it becomes part of a larger discussion. Amy tilts her head slightly. Amy, but do you think that's fair to the people who created it? Sunny, I think fairness isn't always the priority. Awareness is. That line hits harder than expected. The audience reacts, louder this time, a mix of applause and a few surprised sounds. Amy looks at Sunny for a moment, really taking that in. Amy, so you're saying it's okay if something is misunderstood, as long as it sparks awareness? Sunny, I'm saying that sometimes discomfort leads to important conversations. Amy, even if it misrepresents the intention? Sunny, intention doesn't erase impact. There's that phrase again, and this time it lands even heavier. Amy pauses, then responds more slowly. Amy, I hear you. I really do. But I also think there has to be space for creators to explain their intentions without being dismissed. Sunny, and there has to be space for people to express how they feel about what they're seeing. Amy, of course. I'm not arguing against that. Sunny, then what are you arguing? That question is direct, not aggressive, but very pointed. Amy takes a breath before answering. Amy, I'm arguing for balance, for nuance, for the idea that we can have these conversations without immediately placing blame. Sunny nods slightly, but she responds just as firmly. Sunny, and I'm arguing that sometimes accountability feels like blame to the person being held accountable. The audience reacts again, this time a little louder, more divided. Joy leans back, looking between them. Joy, this is one of those moments where nobody's really wrong, but nobody's really backing down either. That gets a few laughs, but it's true, and everyone at the table seems to know it. Whoopi finally leans in again, her tone calm but more authoritative this time. Whoopi, all right, let me jump in here for a second. Everything quiets down almost immediately. Whoopi, because what I'm hearing is two things that actually can exist at the same time. She gestures toward Amy. Whoopi, you're saying that storytelling should be open, that people should be able to explore different perspectives, and that intention matters. Then she looks at Sunny. Whoopi, and you're saying that impact matters, that representation matters, and that people need to be more mindful of how stories affect others. Both Amy and Sunny nod slightly. Whoopi continues. Whoopi, the problem is, we're living in a time where those two ideas are constantly colliding. And there isn't always a clean answer. The audience applauds, a bit of relief in the room. But Amy speaks again before the moment fully settles. Amy, I agree with that. I just don't want the conversation to become so restrictive that people are afraid to tell stories at all. Sunny responds immediately. Sunny, and I don't want the conversation to stay so open that it ignores real concerns. Amy, I'm not ignoring them. Sunny, and I'm not shutting you down. They both stop again. Another pause. Another moment where it feels like the conversation could go either way. Sarah looks like she's about to say something, but she hesitates. Joy glances at Whoopi, almost like she's waiting to see if the show is about to cut to commercial. But it doesn't. Amy speaks one more time, quieter now. Amy, I just hope people watch the film before deciding what it is. Sunny holds her gaze. Sunny, and I hope people feel heard when they say how it affects them. The audience reacts again, softer this time, but more thoughtful. And just when it feels like things might finally settle, Joy leans forward with a question that shifts the tone all over again. Joy, can I ask something a little more direct? Amy looks at her. Amy, sure. Joy, did you have any hesitation taking this role, knowing this conversation might happen? The audience reacts instantly, louder this time. Because now it's not just about the issue anymore. Now it's about Amy's decision. The question hangs there, and you can feel the shift immediately. Joy, did you have any hesitation taking this role, knowing this conversation might happen? The audience leans in, some murmurs, a few scattered yeah reactions. This is different now. It's no longer just about ideas or perspectives. It's about Amy herself. Amy takes a breath before answering. Not rushed, not defensive, but careful. Amy, yes, I did. That answer alone gets a reaction, a mix of surprise and curiosity. Amy continues. Amy, I think anytime you take on something that deals with sensitive subject matter, you have to pause and really think about it. I did that. I asked questions. I had conversations. I made sure I understood what the intention was. Sunny watches her closely, listening without interrupting this time. Amy, and at the end of the day, I felt like the story was worth telling. Not because it was perfect, but because it could start conversations like this. There's a soft reaction from the audience, some nodding, a few claps. Sunny responds, calmer now. Sunny, I can respect that. I really can. And I appreciate you saying that you thought about it, because that matters. Amy nods slightly. Amy, it does matter. And I don't take that lightly. There's a noticeable shift in tone. Not a full resolution, but less sharp than before. Sunny, I think where people struggle is when it feels like those decisions are made without considering the bigger picture. Amy, and I understand that. I just want people to know that there was consideration. Sunny, and that's important to hear. For the first time in a while, there's a sense of both of them actually meeting in the middle. Not agreeing completely, but acknowledging each other. Whoopi leans forward again, sensing the moment. Whoopi, see, this is the part people don't always get to see. The part where you actually listen to each other. The audience applauds, louder this time, a bit of relief in the room. Joy adds, half smiling. Joy, yeah, but they also like the part where we argue. That gets a bigger laugh, breaking the tension more clearly. Amy smiles slightly, and even Sunny lets out a small laugh. Sarah jumps in. Sarah, I think what's interesting is that this conversation probably mirrors what a lot of people are having at home right now. Sunny nods. Sunny, exactly. And those conversations aren't always easy. Amy, but they're necessary. Another small round of applause. Whoopi looks toward the camera briefly, then back at the table. Whoopi, all right, we're going to take a quick break. The audience reacts, that familiar talk show rhythm returning. Whoopi, but when we come back, we've got more with Amy Adams, so don't go anywhere. The music cues up, the camera pulls back slightly, and the show cuts to commercial. And just like that, the live moment pauses. But the conversation doesn't. Off camera, things are quieter, but not completely relaxed. Amy leans back in her chair, taking a sip of water. Sunny adjusts her notes, glancing over briefly. There's no hostility, but there's still weight from what just happened. Joy leans toward Amy slightly. Joy, hey, that was a tough seat to be in. Amy gives a small, appreciative smile. Amy, it's okay. I expected some of it. Sunny looks over, her tone softer now. Sunny, and for what it's worth, I wasn't trying to make it personal. Amy nods. Amy, I know. It just becomes personal when you're the one sitting here. Sunny, that's fair. There's a brief pause, then Sunny adds. Sunny, and I do appreciate you engaging with it instead of shutting down. Amy, I think that's the only way these conversations work. Whoopi, overhearing, chimes in casually. Whoopi, that's the job. Nobody comes here for easy conversations. A few light chuckles between them. The stage manager signals they're about to come back from break. Everyone resets quickly. Smiles return, posture straightens, the energy shifts back to on-air mode. When the show resumes, the tone is noticeably lighter. Whoopi, welcome back. We're here with Amy Adams, and we've been having quite the conversation this morning. The audience applauds again. Whoopi, and that's what we do here, we talk it out. Amy smiles. Amy, I appreciate that, even when it gets a little intense. Joy jumps in. Joy, a little? That was spicy. Laughter fills the room again. Sunny adds with a small smile. Sunny, but productive. Amy nods. Amy, I agree. The rest of the segment moves into slightly safer territory, talking about Amy's career, upcoming projects, lighter behind-the-scenes moments. The tension doesn't disappear completely, but it's no longer the focus. Eventually, the segment wraps. Whoopi, Amy Adams, everybody. Make sure you check out her new film. We'll be right back. Applause. Music. The segment ends. But the real aftermath starts almost immediately after. Clips from the exchange begin circulating online within minutes. Headlines start popping up. Amy Adams pushes back during heated talk show debate. Sunny Hostin challenges Hollywood representation live on air. A tense moment on daytime TV sparks bigger conversation. On platforms like Twitter and YouTube, the clip spreads fast. Some viewers side with Sunny, praising her for raising important points about representation and accountability. Others support Amy, saying she handled the situation with grace and stood up for creative freedom. Comments flood in. She stayed calm the whole time. Respect. Sunny said what needed to be said. This is the kind of conversation we need more of. They were both right in different ways. Of course, not all reactions are balanced. Some clips are edited to highlight only the most intense moments, making the exchange seem more heated than it actually was. Others focus on the quieter, more thoughtful parts, the moments where both women tried to understand each other. Backstage, the mood after the show is mixed. Not negative, not tense, just reflective. Amy speaks briefly with producers, then heads out, stopping to thank a few audience members who are still nearby. Sunny stays behind for a moment, talking with the team, clearly still thinking about the discussion. There's no dramatic fallout. No arguments off camera. Just that lingering feeling that something real happened, something unscripted. And that's what sticks with people. Not just the disagreement, but the fact that it unfolded in real time, without filters, without edits. A real conversation. Messy, imperfect, but honest. And that's why moments like this keep people watching. Because you never really know when a routine interview is going to turn into something deeper. Or when a simple question is going to open the door to a much bigger discussion. So what do you think? Was Sunny right to push the conversation the way she did? Or did Amy make a stronger point about creative freedom and storytelling? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories.